Story number 1. Attic Tenant. I was on a video call with a client when I first heard it. 9 o'clock, still light outside from the unseasonably warm evening we were having in Portland. The creaking was faint, rhythmic, coming from somewhere above my home office on the second floor. I kept talking, nodding at whatever the client was saying about color palettes, but part of my attention had split off to track the sound. It stopped after maybe 10 seconds. The house was old, a rental I'd moved into 4 months ago, and I'd gotten used to its various settling noises, the furnace clicking on, pipes expanding, wood adjusting to temperature changes. After the call ended, I sat there for a moment in the quiet. The creaking didn't return. I stood up and walked into the hallway, looking up at the ceiling. The landlord had mentioned during the walkthrough that the attic was sealed off, inaccessible, something about old insulation that needed professional removal someday. He'd been vague about it. I listened for another minute, heard nothing, and went back to my desk. Probably raccoons. They nested in attics this time of year. I made a mental note to text the landlord in the morning. I worked for another hour, finished the project I'd been pushing through, and decided to call it a night. My routine was specific. I locked the front and back doors, checked the windows on the first floor, set my bag and keys on the kitchen counter, then upstairs for a shower. I was meticulous about home security, always had been, especially living alone. It gave me a sense of control. The bathroom filled with steam as I stood under the hot water, letting the day drain away. That's when I noticed the smell. It came through the ceiling vent, drifting down with the moisture, not mildew, not the usual mustiness of an old house. It was stale and organic, like unwashed fabric or bedding that had been sealed in a room for too long. The kind of smell that makes you think of bodies and enclosed spaces. My skin prickled. I turned off the washer and stood there dripping, listening. Nothing. I told myself it was probably just the vent pulling air from some forgotten corner of the house, some old storage space where the previous tenants had left something behind. But I dried off faster than usual, wrapped the towel around myself, and stepped into the hallway. The smell was fainter out here, almost undetectable. I was being paranoid. I'd been working too many late nights, spending too much time alone in this house. I went into my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, reaching for my phone to set an alarm. That's when I heard the footsteps, directly above me. Not the vague creaking from earlier. These were distinct, deliberate. The sound of weight shifting from one foot to another, a slow, careful walk across the space above my ceiling. I froze. My heart kicked into a different rhythm. I stared up at the ceiling, watching, waiting for the sound to repeat. It did. 3 more steps, moving from the area above my bed toward the area above my closet. Too heavy to be a raccoon, too purposeful. The light fixture in the center of the ceiling trembled slightly. A thin stream of dust fell from around its base, drifting down onto my comforter. I watched the dust settle. My mouth had gone dry. Someone was in the attic. Someone was walking around up there, in the space the landlord said was sealed off. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the landlord had hired someone to check the insulation. Maybe he'd forgotten to tell me, but it was past 10 o'clock at night. No one did house repairs at 10 o'clock. And if someone had come into the house, I would have heard them. I'd locked all the doors. I always locked the doors. The footsteps moved again, back toward the center of the ceiling. Slow. Measured. Like someone pacing. Or waiting. I stood up carefully, quietly, still in my towel. My car keys were downstairs in the kitchen. My phone was in my hand. I thought about calling 911 right then, but what would I say? I heard footsteps in my attic. They'd tell me to leave the house, and I was planning to do that anyway, but some part of me was still trying to make this make sense, still trying to find the rational explanation. I pulled on jeans and a shirt from the floor, not bothering with anything else. My hands were shaking. The footsteps had stopped, but that was worse somehow. The silence felt like someone holding their breath. I slipped my feet into the sneakers by the door and picked up my phone. I didn't turn off the bedroom light. I didn't close the door. I just walked out into the hallway and down the stairs, moving as quickly as I could without running, without making noise. The front door was still locked. I unlocked it, stepped outside, and pulled it shut behind me. The warm evening air hit my face. My car was in the driveway, parked under the streetlight. I walked to it, got in, locked the doors. My hands were trembling so badly it took me 2 tries to get the key in the ignition. I sat there with the engine running, staring at my house. The bedroom light was still on. I could see it glowing in the upstairs window. No shadows moved past it. Nothing looked disturbed. From out here, it looked like a normal house on a normal street. I called 911. The dispatcher was calm, professional. She asked if I was safe, if I was out of the house. I said yes. She said officers were on the way, stay in the car, keep the doors locked. I watched the bedroom window the entire time. The light stayed on. Nothing moved. 2 patrol cars arrived within 8 minutes. I got out and met the officers in the driveway, told them what I'd heard. They asked for my keys. One of them radioed for backup before they went inside. I stood by my car, arms crossed against the chill I was suddenly feeling despite the warm night. They were inside for almost 20 minutes. When they came back out, their expressions had changed. One of them asked me to stay where I was. The other one made a phone call. More cars arrived. Detectives, someone with a camera. Eventually, one of the first officers came over to explain. They'd found the access point in the hallway ceiling, hidden behind a panel that had been painted over to blend in. The attic wasn't sealed. There was a sleeping bag up there. Empty food wrappers, granola bar packages, cracker boxes, a gallon jug of water half full, and a phone. The phone had photos on it, dozens of them. Pictures of me taken through my windows over the past 3 weeks, me working at my desk, me cooking dinner, me sitting on the couch watching television. The angles were all from outside, from the yard, but they were close, zoomed in, detailed. They asked me questions I couldn't really answer. Had I noticed anything missing? Any signs of entry? Had I seen anyone watching the house? I said no to everything. I hadn't noticed anything. That was the worst part. I'd been living my careful, security-conscious life, locking my doors and checking my windows, and someone had been living in the space above my head the entire time. They didn't find anyone in the attic when they searched it. Whoever it was had left. Maybe when I was in the shower, maybe when I was sitting in my car. There was another access point, they said, in the eave on the backside of the house. Easy to reach from the garage roof. I didn't go back inside that night. I stayed in a hotel. The landlord called the next morning, horrified, apologetic. He hadn't known. He'd never checked the attic himself. The police kept the house for 2 days, processing it, searching it. They never found who it was. The phone had been wiped of any identifying information except for the photos. I broke my lease. I moved out as soon as they'd let me back in to pack. I don't live alone anymore. I have a roommate now, someone I trust, and we live in a newer building, the kind with concrete ceilings and no attic space. But sometimes at night, I still wake up and listen to the silence above me, waiting for the sound of footsteps that never come. Story number 2. Dock Slip 17. I arrived at the private marina a little after 6 in the morning, when the fog was still thick enough that I could barely see from one slip to the next. The harbour master had left the gate code in my voicemail the night before. Storm came through 3 days ago, and the owner wanted documentation for an insurance claim on a 42-foot Hatteras that allegedly took some hull damage while moored. I'd done this kind of inspection hundreds of times. Walk the deck, photograph everything, check the bilge, write it up, move on. The fog made it slower going. I had to use my phone's flashlight just to read the slit numbers on the posts. The Hatteras was in slip 17 near the end of the dock. White hull, blue canvas covers over the cockpit. I stepped aboard carefully. The deck was slick with condensation. I could hear water lapping against the pilings, but otherwise the marina was silent. No one else around. Most people don't keep their boats in the water this time of year anyway, and it was a weekday. I started with exterior photos, starboard side first, working my way around. The damage was minor. Some gel coat scratches along the waterline, a small dent near the stern where something had probably knocked into it during the storm. Nothing major. I was crouched down getting a close-up of the dent when the entire boat rocked hard to one side. Not a gentle sway, a violent lurch like someone had shoved the hull with both hands. I grabbed the rail to keep from losing my balance. My phone almost went into the water. I straightened up and looked around. The fog was too thick to see much, but I could make out the neighboring boats. None of them were moving. The water between the slits was flat, almost glassy. No wake, no ripples. I waited, listening for an engine, maybe a larger boat passing outside the marina that could have sent a wake through the breakwater. Nothing. Probably just a current shift. The tide was coming in. Sometimes you get weird pressure changes in a confined marina. I told myself that and went back to taking photos. The rocking stopped the moment I stepped toward the cabin stairs. I noticed it because I'd been bracing myself, expecting another lurch, but the boat went completely still. I stood there at the top of the stairs for a moment, one hand on the rail, telling myself I was being stupid. Boats move. That's what they do. The main cabin door was unlocked. The owner had said it would be. I stepped down into the salon, using my flashlight to see. Smelled like mildew and old upholstery, the usual boat smell. I checked the bilge first, pulled up the floor panel and looked for water. Dry. Good. Then I noticed the other smell underneath the mildew. Wet rubber. Sharp. Chemical, like a wetsuit that hadn't dried properly. I turned slowly, scanning the cabin with my light. Galley to the left, seating area to the right, forward berth door straight ahead. The door was closed. That was wrong. I'd done a preliminary walkthrough an hour ago, right after I arrived. I always do a quick pass before I start the real inspection. The forward berth door had been open then. I was sure of it. I remembered seeing the V-berth cushions inside. I stood there staring at the door, trying to remember if I'd closed it myself for some reason. Maybe I had. Maybe I was just tired. I'd been working 60-hour weeks for the past month, and I wasn't sleeping well. I crossed the cabin and reached for the handle. The lock clicked, not from my side, from inside. An audible mechanical click as the latch engaged. I pulled my hand back like I'd touched something hot. There was weight shifting behind the door. Not loud, but unmistakable. The sound of someone moving in a cramped space, fabric sliding against fiberglass. My throat went dry. I took a step back. Hello? My voice came out thin. Someone in there? No answer. I should have left right then. I knew I should have left. But part of me was still trying to rationalize it. Maybe the owner was on board. Maybe he'd come down to check on something and I hadn't heard him. Maybe he'd locked the door because he was changing clothes or using the head. I'm with the insurance company, I said. I'm just here to do the inspection. Nothing. I backed toward the stairs. My hand found the rail. I was halfway up when the engine started. No one had turned the key. I hadn't seen keys anywhere. But the diesel engine coughed once and then rumbled to life, shaking the entire boat. The throttle engaged. I felt the yacht lurch forward against the dock lines, straining like a dog on a leash. I didn't think. I just ran. Up the stairs, across the deck, and I jumped. The water was so cold it felt like a punch to the chest. 48 degrees, maybe colder. I went under, came up gasping, and started swimming toward the neighboring dock. My coat was dragging me down. My shoes felt like concrete blocks. Help! I was shouting, swallowing water. Someone help! The yacht's engine was still running behind me. I grabbed the ladder on the next dock over and hauled myself up, coughing, shaking so hard I could barely hold on. The harbour master came running about 5 minutes later. I was sitting on the dock, soaking wet, trying to explain. He called Harbour Patrol. They boarded the Hatteras with 2 officers, guns drawn. No one was on board. The forward cabin was empty. The engine was still running, but they found no keys in the ignition. They shut it down manually. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no wet marks, nothing. But my briefcase was on the deck. I'd left it in my car. I was sure I'd left it in my car. But there it was, sitting on the cockpit bench, opened. My wallet was laid out next to it, my insurance credentials, my business cards, the folder with my home address, my wife's name, my kids' school information, family photos I kept in the inner pocket. Everything was arranged in a neat row, perfectly spaced, like someone had taken their time. The harbor patrol checked the security cameras. They showed me arriving at 5:53 in the morning. They showed me walking down the dock alone, boarding the yacht alone. They showed me jumping into the water 8 minutes later. No one else came or went. They asked if I wanted to file a report. I said yes, but I didn't know what to report. Breaking and entering, trespassing, stalking. The officers looked at each other like they thought I'd had some kind of episode. Fell in the water, got confused, made up a story. I drove home with the heat on full blast, still shivering. My briefcase was in the passenger seat. I kept looking at it. Everything was still there. Nothing stolen, just photographed. I don't go to marinas anymore. I requested a desk assignment. My supervisor thought I was burned out, and maybe I am. But sometimes I'll be sitting at home and I'll smell wet rubber. Just for a second, and they'll check the locks on all the doors. Story number 3. Shift overlap. I arrive at Mercy General a little before 3 in the morning, parking in the back lot where the overnight staff leaves their cars. The building looks different at this hour, most of the windows dark except for the emergency department around front. I've been doing this route for 8 months now, ever since Maya started kindergarten, and I needed the shift differential to make rent work. Tonight's my second double this week. My supervisor asked if I could finish the 4th floor before the demolition crew shows up Monday. They're tearing down the whole west wing, the old surgical unit that's been closed since June. I badge in through the service entrance and take the back stairs up. My cart's already waiting on 4, right where I left it yesterday morning. The hallway stretches out in both directions, dark except for the exit signs. I flit the main lights, but only half of them come on. The rest must be disconnected already. I'm pulling out the mop when the motion sensors down the hall trigger. The lights flicker on in sequence, one panel after another, illuminating the corridor all the way to the far stairwell. But I'm standing still. I haven't walked that direction yet. Probably the sensors going haywire. The electrical system up here is 50 years old, and they've been shutting things down in sections. I've seen lights do strange things in old buildings. I tell myself, that's all it is. I start mopping, working my way down the hall. The rooms on either side are empty, stripped of equipment. Some still have beds pushed against the walls, others are completely bare. It's quiet in a way that feels heavy, like the building is holding its breath. I'm halfway to the nurse's station when I need to refill my bucket. The utility closet is back near the stairwell, so I prop my mop against the wall and head that way. When I push open the stairwell door, the smell hits me immediately. Sharp ammonia, the industrial kind we use on the floors, mixed with cigarette smoke. Stale but recent. That doesn't make sense. Maintenance doesn't come in until 6, and nobody's supposed to be smoking in here anyway. The whole wing's been closed since June. I lean into the stairwell and listen. Nothing. Just the hum of the building's ventilation system. I fill my bucket quickly and get back to the hallway. My phone buzzes. It's a text from my supervisor asking if I can cover Saturday too, someone called out. I'm typing a reply when I hear it. The elevator. The mechanical groan of the cables, the rattle of the car moving between floors. I look up at the indicator panel above the elevator doors. The numbers are lighting up in sequence. 1, 2, 3. The elevator is coming up to the 4th floor. Nobody uses the elevator to come up here. It's marked out of service. There's a piece of yellow tape across the call button. I stand there watching the numbers climb. My heart is beating faster now, and I'm trying to think of a reasonable explanation. Maybe security is doing rounds. Maybe maintenance came in early after all. The number 4 lights up. The elevator stops. The doors don't open. I'm staring at those closed doors when I hear the footsteps, not from the elevator, from the stairwell behind me. The same stairwell where I smelled the smoke. Heavy footsteps, deliberate, coming up the stairs. Then I hear more footsteps from the other end of the hall. The far stairwell. 2 separate sets of footsteps approaching from both directions. I'm trapped in the middle. My hands are shaking as I pull out my phone. I text my supervisor first, then security. 4th floor West Wing needs someone up here now. I hit send and look around. The rooms are all open, no doors, nowhere to hide except the supply closet, 15 feet away. I move fast, pushing my cart aside and slip into the closet. It's barely bigger than a phone booth, shelves stacked with boxes of gloves and paper towels. There's a lock on the inside, the kind that turns. I flip it and press myself against the back wall. The footsteps are closer now. I can hear them clearly through the door. Slow, measured steps, someone walking down the hallway, not hurrying. The footsteps stop somewhere near my abandoned cart, then I hear the radio. A burst of static, then a voice. It sounds like our security channel, the same frequency I hear when guards pass by during rounds. But I can't make out the words. I hold my breath. Through the gap under the door, I see boots. Black boots, security style, standing in the hallway. They're maybe 3 feet away. I watch them turn, facing the closet door. A hand grabs the handle, turns it once, the lock holds, turns it again, harder this time. The door rattles in the frame. Then the boots move away, walking toward the nurse's station. I wait. My phone is on silent, but I can see the screen. My supervisor hasn't responded. Security hasn't responded. I check the time, 3:47 in the morning. I stay in that closet for a long time. I don't hear footsteps anymore, but I don't hear the elevator leave either. At some point I realize I'm crying, not making any sound, just tears running down my face. At 4:32 my phone finally buzzes. Security. On our way up. I wait until I hear voices in the hallway, actual voices, people calling my name. Then I unlock the door. 2 security guards are standing there with flashlights. They walk the entire floor with me, check every room, both stairwells, the elevator, nothing, no one. They ask me what I saw, and I tell them. They look at each other in that way people do when they think you're overreacting. One of them says, the elevator's been glitching all week. The motion sensors too. Old building, he says, plays tricks on you at night. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm just exhausted. I've been working too many hours, not sleeping enough. They walk me downstairs. I tell them I'm going to grab my jacket from my locker and head home. My supervisor can find someone else to finish the 4th floor. But when I get to my locker in the staff room, my combination doesn't work. I try it 3 times. The lock won't open. I find a security guard and explain. He radios for someone with bolt cutters. While we're waiting, he asks if I'm sure I have the right locker. I point to the number. 23. Same locker I've had for 8 months. He opens it with the cutters. It's empty. I'm standing there confused when he says, maybe check the break room upstairs. Sometimes people move stuff when they're cleaning out sections. I don't want to go back up there, but my car keys are in my jacket pocket, my wallet, everything. We take the elevator to 4. The break room is at the far end of the condemned wing, past the nurse's station. When we walk in, I see it immediately. A plastic bag sitting on a chair, my jacket folded neatly on the table, my keys, my wallet, my time card. I pick up the time card. There are 2 punches for today's date, one at 2:58 in the morning, the other at 3:41. I didn't punch in twice, I only punched in once when I arrived. The security guard is saying something about the time clock malfunctioning, about how the system's been buggy lately. But I'm not listening. I'm looking at my jacket, at the way it's folded. Precise. Careful. The way someone would fold it if they wanted me to know they'd been here, that they'd touched my things. I take my jacket and leave. I don't finish my shift. I don't go back.